He was just another janitor sweeping the airport floor until a wealthy businessman recognized his face and remembered the boy who once beat everyone at school, including him. The airport lounge bustled with noise, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, a soft clatter of coffee cups. Business travelers scrolled through their phones, eyes glazed over from red eyes and tight schedules. Among them sat Brandon Cole, founder of a multi-million-dollar tech firm and keynote speaker for the Global Business Summit in New York. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, he barely looked up as he typed furiously on his laptop, juggling calls and emails, until a faint, familiar voice broke the noise around him. "Excuse me, sir, your water bottle rolled over to my side." Brandon looked up, puzzled. A janitor, mid-40s in a faded green uniform, stood beside him holding the bottle. Bren reached for it, murmuring and distracted, "Thanks." But as their eyes met, something clicked. The face was older, roughened by life, but unmistakable. Brandon's eyes widened. "Wait, are you David Reyes?" The janitor froze. "Yeah," he said slowly. "We went to school together, right?" Brandon nodded slowly, stunned. "You were number one in everything. Science fairs, competitions, debate club. You even topped the state exams in senior year." David chuckled lightly, wiping his hands on a rag. That was a long time ago. Brandon stared at him. The name had echoed in his memory for years. David Reyes, the prodigy, everyone assumed would become a professor, a politician, a name in lights. And now he was mopping airport floors. "What happened?" Brandon asked. The question slipping out before he could filter it. David hesitated, his smile faltering just slightly. He said with a shrug, "Didn't have the right connections. Parents got sick, dropped out of college to work. One job led to another. You know how it goes." Brandon didn't know. He had scholarships, mentors, investors. David had raw brilliance, but brilliance always enough, not without a safety net. As passengers boarded their flights, Brandon remained seated watching the man who once beat him in every test, now push a mop across shiny airport tiles. Something twisted in his chest. This isn't right. But what David didn't know as he turned back to his cleaning cart was that Brandon wasn't going to board that plane. Not until he did something to rewrite this story. Because smartest boy he ever knew deserved more than silence. And Brandon Cole was about to change everything. Brandon stood at the edge of Gate 12, watching David fade into the background of fluorescent lights and fast footsteps. It gnawed at him, the memory of that skinny boy with oversized glasses answering every question before the teacher finished asking. Back in high school, David Reyes wasn't just smart, he was unstoppable. And yet here he was, pushing a mop, while people who couldn't solve basic algebra zipped past in business class. Brandon couldn't shake it. He closed his laptop, canceled the flight, and tracked David down in the employee corridor an hour later. "David," he called, jogging slightly. David turned, clearly surprised to see him again. "You didn't board your flight?" "No," Brandon said, breathing hard, "because I couldn't stop thinking something." He tilted his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "What's that?" "You. What happened to you shouldn't have happened." David gave a half smile, not defensive, just tired. "I'm not ashamed of what I do, Brandon. I get by. I do my job. I'm not saying you should be ashamed. I'm saying you were never meant to mop floors. You were meant to change things." David shrugged. Smart doesn't pay the bills when your parents are dying and you're drowning in debt. Life doesn't ask how well you did on your finals. It just moves on. Brandon felt the sting of guilt. He'd had internships handed to him, professors who vouched for him, doors that opened before he even knocked. David, he had talent but no ladder and no one to lift him up. Until now. "I run a tech firm," Brandon said carefully. "We're short on analysts who can think fast and solve real problems. I want you to come in." David blinked. "Wait. What? It's not charity. I've seen you beat problems grown men couldn't solve. You're wasted here." David laughed bitterly. Brandon, I haven't touched code in 10 years. I haven't even used a real computer outside my phone. You think some gonna take me seriously? Brandon's eyes lit with resolve. I do, because I remember who you are, and I'm going to help everyone else remember too. David stared at him speechless. No one had said anything like that to him in 2 decades. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the chance Brandon was offering, or believing he might actually deserve it. Back at the lounge, Brandon handed David a company tablet and login credentials. Here, come in next Monday. We'll train you up. If anyone gives you a second look, they'll answer to me. David swallowed hard, the weight of it hitting him. Why are you doing this? Brandon smiled. Because I don't want to live in a world where people like you are forgotten. And because you were always smarter than me. It's time everyone else saw that too. But not everyone at Brandon's company would welcome a janitor into their glass-walled offices. And as David stepped toward this new world, the ghosts of his past and the pride he had buried were about to rise with him. The following Monday, David Reyes stood in front of a glass tower in Midtown, clutching a borrowed messenger bag and wearing the only button-down shirt he owned. He stared at the polished logo etched into the glass. Cole Tech Innovations. He almost turned around. Almost, but then he remembered Brandon's words. It's time everyone else saw what I already know. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Inside, sleek hallways buzzed with energy. Young professionals in expensive sneakers darted around with iced lattes. Screens flashed with code and data streams David hadn't seen in over a decade. The receptionist barely looked up as he checked in. You're here for janitorial services? David cleared his throat. Number, I'm an incoming data trainee, under Brandon Cole. That made her look. When Brandon entered the room moments later and greeted David with a genuine smile and a firm handshake, the whispers began. Wait, that guy? Wasn't he? Are they serious? Brandon ignored them all. David, meet your team. The onboarding session was awkward. Some team members offered tight smiles. Others barely concealed their skepticism. David didn't blame them. He felt it too. He was rusty, slow on the keyboard, unsure of new platforms. But when one of the analysts threw a practice problem on the board, a complex equation balancing supply chains and AI prediction logic, David stared at it, then quietly rewrote the solution. Not only correct, better, simpler, cleaner, elegant. The room fell silent. By week 2, things had changed. Brandon invited David to a strategy meeting with product engineers. They scoffed until David pointed out a flaw in their algorithm no one had noticed, then offered a fix in 5 minutes. By month's end, David wasn't just learning, he was leading small teams in internal test builds. And yet, every time someone asked where he had worked before, David hesitated. He hated telling them the truth. Not because he was ashamed of mopping floors, but because he feared they'd stop listening. Till one Friday morning, during a company-wide brainstorming session, Brandon shared the full story. This is David Reyes. He was the smartest student in our entire state back in the day. And then life happened. But that doesn't erase genius. He's not here because of pity. He's here because I want the best on my team. There was no applause, just a long, powerful silence. And then someone stood up. Would you review my new AI loop? I think it's missing something. By the end of the quarter, David was promoted to senior systems strategist. He now helped design products, mentor junior analysts, and rework models that once intimidated him. The man who once swept floors now shaped futures. But the moment that defined it all wasn't on a whiteboard. It came months later, at the airport where it all began. David walked in with a polished badge clipped to his jacket, and the same janitor who had once trained him on floor wax gave him a nod of recognition. You moved up, huh? David smiled gently, clapping the man's shoulder. I didn't move up. Someone just reminded me I was never supposed to be down here in the first place. The invitation came unexpectedly. State Alliance Conference, Boston. A special panel. Rediscovering Lost Genius, where brilliance meets second chances. They wanted David Reyes as the keynote speaker. He stared at the email for a long time. This was the same academic circle that once ignored his scholarship applications. The same world that forgot his name when his parents died, when he left school, when he quietly disappeared from brilliance into invisibility. He almost declined. But Brandon, he insisted. They need to hear you. Not because it's inspiring, because it's overdue. 2 months later, David stepped onto the stage. No mop, no borrowed shirts, no shame. The room was packed. Tech moguls, researchers, educators, students. His voice was steady. I once thought intelligence alone would carry me. But genius without support is like a lighthouse with no light bulb. He paused, scanning the crowd. I mopped airport floors for 15 years. And I'm not embarrassed by that, because work is never shameful. But being forgotten, that nearly broke me. Until someone remembered. And that's what I want you to take home today. Be the person who remembers not just brilliance, but people. You might be the only door someone ever has. The standing ovation lasted longer than the speech. Back at Colt, David continued to rise. And cleared the path, but because once the door opened, David built the staircase himself. He became known not only as a strategist, but as a quiet mentor. He launched the Reyes Initiative, a program that offered second-chance tech training for adults with non-traditional backgrounds. Janitors, factory workers, retired veterans. He gave them what no one gave him, a ladder, voice, a chance. Years later, Brandon sat across from David during a press interview. The reporter asked, "Mr. Cole, how does it feel having discovered one of the greatest minds of your generation?" Brandon laughed. "I didn't discover him. He was always there. The only thing I did was finally stop walking past." In the lobby of Coltech headquarters hangs a framed photo. David Reyes and Brandon Cole at the original airport gate, both holding coffee, both smiling, like two men who know the value of one moment, changing everything. The plaque below reads, "The janitor who once swept floors now sweeps obstacles out of others' paths, because in the end, brilliance doesn't fade, it just waits for the world to notice again."